was that we immediately discovered that none of the Chinese workers spoke any English at all, including the translators. There was no Google Translate back then, and needless to say, none of us spoke any Chinese. The only Chinese phrase I knew was "Ni hao ma," which means, "How are you doing?" And how were we doing? Not too well at this point, as we had a serious problem on our hands. Just like that famous line from the classic 1967 movie Cool Hand Luke, what we had here was a failure to communicate. So how were we supposed to get this installation done when we literally couldn't understand one another? We were all just kind of standing there that first morning staring at each other, trying to figure out what to do first, when it hit me. If we can't communicate in words, maybe we can communicate in pictures. When the Chinese laborers finally showed up with a big knack toolbox, towed in by a bicycle, did I mention this was an extremely low-tech operation? I didn't know the Chinese word for hammer, or screwdriver, or tape measure, or nail, but if that's what we needed, we were going to have to get the message across by pointing and by drawing pictures back and forth. It ended up turning into a non-stop game of Pictionary and charades. 2 words, 3 syllables, sounds like, screwdriver. Long story short, it all ended up working out, and I'm glad to be able to report that the grand opening of the park was a huge success and one of the highlights of my young career. When I got back home to Los Angeles and reflected on my experience, one of the biggest things that struck me was how we leveraged the power of visuals to communicate, to innovate, to manage, and to lead. And that, in a single phrase, has become the foundation of my thinking and of all of my work ever since. The power of visual thinking and visual communication. So what exactly do we mean by visual thinking? In a nutshell, it's about thinking in pictures. And visual communication? That's about communicating with pictures. They both involve using visually related techniques such as visual imagery, mental models and frameworks, metaphors and analogies, and visual storytelling to A, formulate an idea, and B, get that idea out of your head and into someone else's. And the goal of visual thinking and visual communication? Ultimately, in a simple phrase, it's about getting other people to see what you're saying. If you think about it, that is the objective of any communication, whether it's a one-on-one conversation, a text, an email, a blog post, a presentation, a TED Talk, an advertisement, a novel, a play, poem, song, or TV show, like Superman or Batman. Taking an idea and expressing it in a way that others will be able to see what is being said. So why visuals? When we communicate a message visually, as opposed to, say, just verbally, it dramatically increases our impact in 3 key areas: attention, comprehension, and retention. And these words even rhyme, making them easier to remember. Without getting into all the science behind it, the use of visuals gets people to focus, thereby capturing their attention. The use of visuals increases understanding, helping people to better comprehend, and it enables them to remember, thereby enhancing their retention. And that's why, as the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. For example, one of my primary areas of focus is leadership. I design and deliver management and leadership training programs for organizations and teach leadership graduate classes at NYU and Columbia. When I ask participants in my programs to shout out the first word that comes to mind when they hear the word leadership, what would you guess the most popular response is? How would you answer? Well, by far the most common response tends to be the word vision. But what does it mean to have a leadership vision? And what does it mean to say someone is a visionary leader? In a word, it's about seeing. It's about having a picture in one's mind's eye and envisioning.